Good evening, everybody. Live streaming is on now, so we'll start the meeting. For anybody who hasn't met me or doesn't know who I am, I'm Pat Edwards, the Chair of Planning Committee. There's no fire alarm this evening. Should the alarm sound, please leave by the nearest available emergency exit. Two of the closest exits are through the glass doors behind you to my left and through the double doors on the riverside behind you. Please muster at the Tower House car park. Do not use the doors to my right as they're currently out of action. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recordings of the meeting using whatever non-disruptive methods they think are suitable. I'd like to remind everyone present that the meeting is being minuted, recorded, filmed and made available to view in live and archive form via the Council's website. If you're seated in the public gallery, it's possible the cameras may capture your image. If you wish to avoid being filmed, it's recommended you make a member of staff aware who can direct you to where to sit. The Westgate Gardens on the riverside will be locked, so members of the public must leave the Guildhall by the side exit, again behind the glass door. Andrew, have we got any apologies?
We have apologies from Councillor Keith Bothwell.
Do we have any substitutes?
No substitutes, Chair.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? Andrew, could you read the general declaration first, please? Thank you.
I will. All or some councillors may have received correspondence from or spoken with applicants, agents, supporters or objectors, and some of the public speakers may also be known to members of the committee due to their work as councillors. Neither circumstance prevents councillors from participating in the meeting. However, any councillor who considers that they do not have an open mind in respect of any item on the agenda should not participate in the meeting when the relevant item is to be discussed.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest? I think I will comment that Councillor Mackenzie will be speaking on the matter and then leaving the chamber because he has declared that that's what he should be doing. Okay. Public participation. There are two public speakers tonight who will be heard immediately after the officer's presentation. And if we then can move on to application number CA 23-01743, land north of Popes Lane, Sturry, CT2 OJZ. And I've got Simon Thomas here, Head of Planning, to introduce the report, so I'll ask him to do that now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. So this application is for 120 dwellings on land at Popes Lane in Sturry. This is the application site. As you'll see, Popes Lane runs along the south boundary of the site, and then the Herne Bay Road is to the left-hand side, and there's an area of undeveloped land between the site and Herne Bay Road. It's for 120 homes. The indicative access, all matters are reserved, so there will be future reserved matters applications that need to be submitted for all of the detail. But the indicative access is, well, pretty obviously from Popes Lane. There's no other way of getting into the site. There's a significant area of landscape, I'll show you that in a second, landscape space within the site, which would deliver a very high level of biodiversity net gain, naturally deliver that. Let me just show you sorry. So this is, again, this is just another plan showing the site. There are two public footpaths, one running along the right-hand side of the site, and another one crossing through the site diagonally, and this gives access between Popes Lane and Herne Bay Road. So it's quite a well-used public right-of-way, and the applicant will be, as part of the development, improving the section that runs through their site. So that's part of the proposals, part of the requirements of the applicator permission if granted. So The application is, as I said, for 120 dwellings. There's a large area of open space, so a combination of formal open space, play space, but also informal space. There's ancient woodland around the site, and there's a significant buffer between that and the housing development. The public right-of-way, as I say, runs across here, and that would be improved, and that does provide, as I say, access to the Herne Bay Road. And as you will know, if you've been driven past or been on a bus past the site, there's a new Tesco store which is within a short walk of this site on the Herne Bay Road, which is associated with the new housing development at Broadoak. The applicant also is caught by the Stodmarsh issue, so they have to achieve nutrient neutrality on the site, and what they're proposing at this stage is an on-the-site wastewater treatment works, and that would be located at the top there. You can see the sort of rectangular shaped thing on the plan, and that would be the wastewater treatment works that would mitigate the impact on Stodmarsh. So the water would go through that works rather than into the normal wastewater treatment works. The dwelling density that is being indicated, again, all of this will be a matter for reserve matters applications, but the indicative density is 38 dwellings per hectare, and provided in 2 and 2.5 story dwellings, so fairly low level dwellings, nothing significant in height on the site. 30% of the units would be affordable homes in accordance with the council's policy. The Section 106 agreement would require 118,000 towards outdoor space, and that might be either at Hersden Recreation Ground where there's a need, or the Sturry Road Community Garden where there's an identified need. And as you know, with Section 106 agreements, we have to identify a need in order to ask for contributions to be made. In addition to that, there's 103,000 which the NHS has asked for to improve health facilities, which would result from the additional demand associated with these additional houses. And the big item under the 106 agreement is the 2.6 million contribution towards the Sturry Relief Road, and that is quite an important contribution that this development will make towards the funding of that road. In addition to that, the site is still liable, so it's not a strategic site under the current local plan, and therefore there will be SIL payable on this development, which will depend on the types of dwellings and so on, but it will be several £1 million SIL contribution, which will obviously come into the council's. The council will be paid to the council for community infrastructure purposes. Decisions to be made by the council in the future. So the report explains that we're in presumption. It's exactly the same wording, effectively, as the reports we've seen previously, where we explain we're in presumption in favour of sustainable development. Therefore, we can't dismiss sites that are outside of the local plan. There also was a previous inspector's decision on this site. That appeal was dismissed, but only on highway grounds, and the payment of 2.6 million towards the Sturry Relief Road has effectively overcome that concern raised by the inspector. And as you know, previous inspectors' decisions are a material consideration that have to be given significant weight when we make subsequent decisions. Yeah, I mean, the application's outline form, all matters reserved. Those matters of principle that the report sets out are for you to consider, and the recommendation is to approve the outline application at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we can now turn to our speakers. Roshna Ahmed, objector, please could you come forward? You have 3 minutes, and we will time you.
Good evening. My name is Roshna Ahmad, local resident and also member of Sabora Residents Group. Thank you for this chance to state our objections to this application, the third since 1997, when 88 houses were refused. In 2018, 140 houses were refused. And this current one under consideration from 2023 for 120 houses, which should also be refused. In the past, issues such as village and landscape character, preservation of long-used vital agricultural land, nutrient neutrality and extending the village settlement boundary were grounds for refusal. We still consider these important in addition to our worries over the highway's safety and congestion. Unfortunately, many of these grounds for these have been removed by central government's national policies driving developments forward regardless. This grade 2 and 3 agricultural land has either produced food or cover crops for as many years as locals can remember, and at this time of climate crisis and food inflation, this much-used field is sorely needed for food production. Clearly, highway safety issues are still material, as in the officer's report and in the last refusal in 2019, the inspector stated, "I conclude that the proposed development would have an unacceptably severe cumulative impact on traffic flows and that the conflict with policy T1, note that, is in my view so substantial that it is not outweighed merely by causing no harm in other respects." Since this statement, estates at Hoplands, Bullockston, Herne Bay Golf, Broad Oak and many other piecemeal developments have hugely increased the amount of traffic passing through Sturry and worsened the travel times. At the appeal hearing in 2019, the possibility was mooted of a Grampian condition restricting the development until the Sturry relief load is in place. In 2023, the City Council in their draft local plan policy R9 relating to Popes Lane stated, "The Sturry Relief Road must be fully operational before the occupation of any dwellings on the site. We need reassurance that if this application is approved, the City Council will adhere to their policy on this." The officer's report, which refers only to policy T9, which is actually a parking policy, assumes that the proposed 2.6 million S106 contribution agreed will remove the inspector's previous grounds for refusal. Clearly, this is no guarantee that the hugely expensive link road will be delivered, or if it ever becomes operational, will solve the infamous traffic issues experienced by all residing in and travelling through Sturry. The recent abandonment of the Eastern Bypass makes this relief road even more pointless, with the huge cost depriving Sturry of other much-needed community resources which could otherwise be funded via Section 106. Given the runaway costs of the road from 26 to 41 million, the completion of this project looks precarious. From the outset, KCC could not contribute funds, and the current dire financial and administrative situation, combined with lack of progress on the development, enabling it make it this ill-conceived road to nowhere, doomed to failure. Is it time to recognise there is no short-term solution to the continued oversaturation of Sturry with traffic, and that CCC and KCC alike need to acknowledge that without a fresh approach to this problem, neither this nor any other development that increases congestion and pollution in Sturry should be approved? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was just checking something out, but please, Chris Lee, who's the agent, is our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members, and thank you for the opportunity to address you in support of the application. I'd like to start by thanking the Council's officers for their professional consideration of the application since it was submitted in September 2023 and state that the applicant fully endorses their recommendation to approve the application. Members will be aware that the Council have allocated the application site for residential development within the draft local plan. Since the submission of our planning application, we have worked closely with officers to ensure that the development proposals result in the delivery of a sustainable scheme that meets the criteria set out in Policy R9 of the plan. The application will deliver a number of significant benefits which we say should be given substantial weight in favour of approval. It will deliver up to 120 dwellings towards the Council's housing land supply deficit, including 36 affordable dwellings to meet the needs of those on the Council's housing register. And crucially, this application will make a contribution of £2.6 million towards the committed Story Relief Road, which the County Council has confirmed is necessary to meet a shortfall in funding for the road. In addition to this, the applicant has demonstrated that a biodiversity net gain of over 53% is possible on this site, significantly in excess of the emerging local plan requirement for 20% net gain. Over 66% of the site will be set aside for new open space provision, which will be accessible to new and existing residents of the village. There are conditions in relation to nutrient neutrality, the provision of a sustainability and energy strategy for the site, and to ensure that all new houses are provided with EV charging infrastructure. Now, members will be aware that in 2019, an appeal for development on this site was dismissed. At that time, the site was found to be acceptable in principle, even when the council had a 5-year housing land supply, with the only reason for dismissal being that of highways impact, given that at the time the Story Relief Road was not committed. Not only does the Relief Road now have permission, the grant of planning permission on this site is key to securing its delivery. So it's clear that the only previous reason for refusing permission cannot be sustained. There are no outstanding objections from highways or any other statutory consultees, and that covers all of the matters that were raised by the previous speaker. So in summary, the benefits that this application will bring, we say, make it the epitome of the kind of site that the council needs to approve in light of the lack of an up-to-date plan and 5-year housing land supply deficit. I therefore respectfully request that members follow officer recommendation and approve the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And now I invite Councillor Mackenzie to speak to this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Hello, colleagues. So this evening I am speaking to you not as a member of the Planning Committee, but as a ward councillor representing my residents. Councillor KG Moses and I have been listening very closely to the concerns held by the residents and the Story Parish Council, and I will be speaking on their behalf this evening. There are some positive elements to this application, such as the green infrastructure and affordable housing, which we think should be commended. However, there are also significant concerns that must be addressed. This is not opposition to all development. We recognise the severity of the housing crisis and the need for growth. This is merely voicing legitimate concerns on the sustainability of this development raised by our residents. In terms of road safety, residents have long raised concerns about traffic congestion, the narrow road width and persistent speeding on Popes Lane, especially during peak hours. On the 7th of January 2024, one resident recorded 537 vehicle movements in 2 hours at the junction of Popes Lane and Hillbrow Avenue. Despite this, the application offers no clear plan for managing the additional traffic that it will generate. We support the introduction of parking bays to reduce on-street parking, but the road will remain narrow and vulnerable to congestion. There is no indication of any road widening. The 20-mile-per-hour speed limit is routinely ignored, putting pedestrians at risk, and there does not seem to be any proposed mitigations. We welcome the proposed pedestrian crossing, but it is not sufficient. A second crossing would be needed closer to Hillbrow Avenue and the footpath to Broad Oak. This falls short of the requirements in Chapter 9, Paragraph 116 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which calls for proper consideration of the cumulative impacts on the road network. In terms of local public services, the NHS estimates that this development will generate around 288 new patients. Local healthcare services, particularly the Story GP surgery on Island Road, are already operating under significant pressure. Adding hundreds of new patients without corresponding investment in medical infrastructure is unsustainable. It is reported in the consultation responses that local schools and community facilities are also facing difficulty with capacity. Many families are already having to travel to Canterbury or Herne Bay to access essential services. Chapter 8, Paragraph 98 of the National Planning Policy Framework states that new developments must support the delivery of local strategies for health, social and cultural well-being. In terms of nature, the wastewater treatment plant is proposed metres away from residential homes and ancient woodland. This raises serious concerns about the continuous noise and artificial light diminishing quality of life for residents and threatening protected species such as bats, which depend on dark, quiet habitats and are vulnerable to disruption. This relates to paragraphs 180A and 180C of Chapter 15 in the National Planning Policy Framework. For the aforementioned reasons and on behalf of the many Sturry residents who have made their voices heard, we ask you to reject this application this evening. If you are minded to support the application, then we ask for the following. 1, a developer contribution to speed reduction measures on Popes Lane. 2, more clarity on congestion reduction on Popes Lane and road widening. 3, a second pedestrian crossing on Popes Lane closer to Hillbrow Avenue. 4, the £103,000 developer contribution for healthcare requested by the NHS. 5, consideration of how this development will impact local service delivery. And 6, conditions to mitigate noise and light pollution from the wastewater treatment plant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. I think Simon's got a video which he's got up now, which just of the site. So I think it might be worth just letting this run for a second. Simon, are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Mackenzie's leaving the chamber. We won't be doing anything until he's organised himself. That's okay. We'll wait. No, it's just a few.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I took a small video today of the site from Popes Lane, so I'll just show you that now. So Popes Lane, the site is the field in front of you, and the extent of it is the extent of the video. So there's the public right of way that crosses the site is accessed there, and the site then extends just to the tree line. In the distance. I'll show you again because it was a bit quick. But, so this is Popes Lane. The site wraps around the back of these houses as far as the trees that you see in the distance here. And then the site boundary is effectively the tree line that you see in the distance. This is the access to the public right-of-way that crosses the site diagonally, and it goes, so I'll just show you, it crosses the site, and it goes to just nips the corner of the house that you can, nips the corner of the back garden of the house there, so it crosses diagonally here, and then it passes through the piece of land outside the application site towards Herne Bay Road. So it's a straight path diagonally across the site.
Sorry, yes, Councillor.
Can you just confirm, does that come out at the, basically there's a bus stop? Is that where that comes out at? Or does it come out at Canterbury
It comes out
Road?
where the Broad Oak Road junction is. So the bus stop is a fact.
I mean, the question I'm asking is there a footpath when you come out that crossing? Sorry, when you come out the right of way, is there a footpath to walk somewhere, or are you coming onto onto the road?
Yeah. So there's a footpath then along Popes Lane from the site, and so this footpath that I was talking about, that's the end where we saw the stile. It's here, and then it crosses, it nips the corner of the house that you saw in the picture, and it just carries straight on through the site, through the adjacent green gap site, out to Herne Bay Road. So this is the Broad Oak junction, and the bus stop is around here. So the bus stop is here on the Canterbury direction side, and there's a bus stop opposite then going towards Herne Bay. And then the new Tesco is around here. So there's a new Tesco Metro, I think it is, around here, and a Butcher's, I think, too, Brogdale. So there's some new retail provision which is associated with the development of the Broad Oak site.
Councillor Thomas, does that answer your question?
No, not really. Well, it does to a degree, but really, the question is, if you get to the end of that road, is there a footpath there, or are you just literally on a road? So because that's quite a busy road on that corner. But I mean, if it's already there, it's already there. But I don't know who's using it because it doesn't seem to go anywhere.
Are you referring to where that footpath comes out on the Herne Bay Road?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the question. Where does
Yes,
it come
there-
out? Is there a footpath there?
There is a footpath, and there's a footpath, and the bus stop is set back from the footpath. So yeah, it's quite because it was related then to the Broad Oak development, so it's been improved as a result of the development opposite.
Okay. We've got a recommendation here to grant, and I want to explain that I believe we do need a proposal on the table to discuss this, because otherwise we end up with a lot of questions and answers. So I want to propose the recommendation as printed in the report, but on the basis that I've got an open mind and I'll reach my opinion on the acceptability or otherwise of the planning application once the debate has concluded. So I'm proposing it from the chair that the authorisation be given to the Head of Planning and Health to grant planning permission subject to a Section 106 legal agreement to secure the obligations set out in the report and the imposition of the safeguarding conditions as recommended in the report. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Prentice. Sorry, I haven't put mine on. Thank you. So now I would like to open the proposal for debate. Councillor Dixie.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you, Simon, for an excellent report, very comprehensive. A couple of questions. First of all, the Story Relief Road at 2.6 million is one hell of a chunk of money. There's no mention of the phasing of that money, and obviously that money is needed fairly soon for the development of the Relief Road. Will this be covered under reserve matters? First question. And the second question is, there are pylons crossing the site. Are there any restrictions on how close residential housing can be to pylons? I believe there used to be in the past. Thank you.
Get those questions now.
Thank you, Chair. There's no restriction that I'm aware of in relation to pylons crossing the site, and I'm not sure where they do cross. Actually, I didn't.
There are.
They weren't at the corner, was it?
It does say definitely that they cross the site.
Yeah.
But I mean, those obligations would be
But they-
outlined in the
Yeah.
reserve
Yeah.
matters, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So
Right.
yeah. So I mean, we can deal through the reserve matters. We can deal with the location of dwellings if that's necessary. But my understanding is that there's nothing stopping development in relatively close proximity to pylons. Although a developer's unlikely to want to build that closely to it because it's unattractive for anyone purchasing. So I think that sort of will sort itself out, and you'll see the results of that through the reserve matters applications. In terms of the 2.8 million, I mean, the cost going back of about 8 years now, the original cost of the Story Relief Road was around 30 million. And the contributions that were calculated were coming from the Story and Broad Oak sites and the North Hurston sites. And also there was £5 million from the Local Enterprise Partnership grant funding that KCC obtained. And so KCC have secured all of those obligations. And as you remember, the permissions for Story and Broad Oak have been granted. Broad Oak is being built. Hurston, this committee resolved to approve Hurston, North Hurston site a few months ago. So everything is now slotting into place. And this contribution was requested by KCC to ensure that there's no potential shortfall. And of course, when KCC when they're managing projects, they always put quite a significant contingency amount in. So they always want to be overcautious when it comes to that funding, because they're not operating like a private developer, and they can't absorb the funding anywhere else. It does need to come from these contributions. So yes, those contributions are in place, and because that there was a need to ensure that those contributions kept pace with inflationary costs and and material costs and all the rest of it, that they were all indexed. So those contributions that were originally agreed through the Section 106 agreement are all indexed. So whenever they're paid, they're going to be significantly more than they originally would have been had they been paid at the time. So they've taken account of that inflationary pressure.
Councillor Naomi Smith, the next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got... going to move my laptop, that's easier. So, Mike, I want to reiterate something that Councillor Mackenzie said as well. I visited the site on Friday, and there are telegraph poles through the site. They're not like big pylons, but there are telegraph poles. And I guess it's why they've designed the site the way they have, to put the open space where the telegraph poles are, because they're at the top of the north side of the site, and not next to a 2.5-storey house, because then you would have problems. But I am a bit concerned. My main concern is the access in and out of the site for pedestrians. The school is down Hillbrow Avenue. The train station, yes, you might walk all the way along Pope's Lane to come to Herne Bay Road and walk down that way, but you won't. You'll more than likely wiggle down through the existing estate there. And there is no pedestrian crossing on the between Hillbrow Avenue and the entrance to this new site. I'm very, very concerned about this. But there is, what do you call corduroy? I guess it's just so you can stop and have a think about how you're going to cross when there's lots of cars coming. But it doesn't give a right of way to anybody. And I think we're just going to create a real problem there if we don't address it. Because the actual pedestrian crossing is way to the east of the site. And people aren't going to go all the way east to cross over to come back all the way west and come down Hillbrow Avenue. So that's a bit one that I'd like to see get addressed here, and because if we approve this and there's a reason we can't do that crossing, we're creating a real problem. Thank you.
I think there is a commitment to do this. I'm not sure it's been brought out in the report. Simon will just read you the...
Yeah. Under the CCC transport comments in the consultation section, there is reference actually to the a pedestrian cycle crossing point to Hillbrow Avenue, and that should be provided. What it assumed it would be that would happen at reserve matters stage, but certainly if members felt that they wanted to see that, we could add a condition saying that it will be submitted as part.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
we can do that.
I'd really want that done if it was going to be approved here today.
I think that one or two of these things that don't appear, because it's an outline application and would be reserved matters, if we want to condition them now, we can. I must look at this. So Councillor Buckman's next person to speak.
Yeah, thanks for that. This planning application, it seems it seems quite reasonable that we're also voting for the bypass, the S106, as well as this application, because I think you said yourself, to prevent the shortfall and prevent the bypass being built, it's virtually saying this should go ahead. This should go ahead. I'm not sure if I'm reading that correctly, because obviously there's a number of developers who all the money's coming together to build this bypass. And you know, I mean, I think we've spoken about it before. It may not solve the pinch point at the bottom of Island Road, but that's neither here nor there. But no, so although we're voting or discussing this planning application, it seems more that there's quite a lot of weight that for this 106 money, this considerable money for the bypass. And you know, without this money, does the bypass then not go ahead? And then if that's the case, it all sounds like it's been determined that we need this for the bypass, and without this going ahead, we can't have a bypass. So that's one point. And then the other, which is quite a big issue, not that point, is the sewage, the what do you call it, the package treatment plant. If that doesn't go ahead because for some reason, or they decide to, and a sewer connection takes place, is that a reserved matter, or does that have to come before that as like a planning application? That's all. Thank you.
I think we should take those two. I mean, there's a very clear statement from South East Water. If the treatment plant isn't going ahead, then it has to be looked at again. So I'm not quite sure. Simon can explain what that would entail, but certainly it doesn't stop there, Jane, if they don't do that wastewater treatment plant. So, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, if I take them in reverse, the package treatment works as a condition saying that it needs to be provided before the development, and that's to mitigate stop marsh. The water just simply can't go in, the sewage can't go into the normal system, otherwise it would then have that impact on Stodmarsh, and we couldn't grant a permission that would have that effect. There is the possibility, though, given that particularly with the Stour Environmental Credits Company, which has been set up, joint company between Canterbury Council and Ashford Council, that there could be, for example, credits that come out of that company that this developer might choose to buy, in which case they might then buy the credits as opposed to building an on-site wastewater treatment works. But at the moment, all they have available to them is an on-site wastewater treatment work. So we've secured that, but it doesn't mean that there's not another alternative that might be equally as acceptable, as long as it creates nutrient neutrality on the site. That's the thing that we have to ensure. In terms of the Stowe Relief Road, I mean, the majority of money is coming from the other sites. You know, we've got sort of 1,300 or so units on Stowe and Broad Oak, and so the majority is coming from there. KCC have asked for this contribution. I think it's difficult to say precisely why, but they are obviously concerned about increasing costs of the road, particularly given the delays that they've experienced in getting the planning permissions in place. They've had to do a CPO recently, compulsory purchase order, on a bit of land to deliver that road. So they've been doing a lot of that work. And what they've asked, this contribution is effectively, as I see it, a contingency contribution to cover the potential rising costs as the project is built out, because it was never envisaged originally. The contributions were calculated on the basis of Stowe, Broad Oak and North Hurston. Those were the only sites that were brought into the mix. But since then, the Hopland site, the contribution was secured from the Hopland site, and also from the Chislett Colliery site, a contribution has been secured, and now for this site as well. So in a sense, all these developments are paying effectively their fair share towards that the road. And I think the other thing is KCC. It's still a live project. KCC is still intending to deliver it. There's been no decision not to deliver it, and you know, the messages I always get from KCC are that they're very committed to this particular project.
Councillor Prentice is the next speaker.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Simon, for a thorough report. My first question is around the public right-of-way CB59. On the cycle connectivity plan, there's a note that says contribution to be provided to improve surfacing on the section of CB59 beyond the site boundary. Is this, and that's quite important, because I think that makes the footpath attractive, as attractive and accessible as the site, the section of it within the site that's going to be widened and improved. is that something how my question is, how is that being funded, that particular section? Is that KCC funding? Is that developer funding? Is that funding from elsewhere? I also would sort of, absolutely concur with what Councillor Naomi Smith was saying about the foot crossing as well at the top of Hillbrow Avenue. I think that's an absolute must as a condition. So that we really should be, pushing for that and ensuring that is a condition. Because for me, the biggest concerns around this site are around connectivity and the accessibility of it to the surrounding area. I think there's lots about this site that I think can be commended with regards to green space and so on. I'd like to make the point though that the dwellings should not be occupied before the Sturry Link Road. I think that is a really important point. If this development does in part pay for the Sturry Link Road, I don't think it's unnecessary. I don't think it's unreasonable to have that infrastructure in place with other things like the EV car club, which has been proposed. All things that I think help reduce dependence on, two-car families, two-car households. We need one-car households. We need less reliance on private cars, more reliance on walking, cycling and public transport. This is like so many things that have come across this committee. This is an opportunity to get things right from the outset. And so I would just make those points. Thank you.
Just 1 second. Simon's just going to comment on those two things.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of the Sturry Relief Road, the applicant has submitted some evidence, transport assessments, which demonstrate that this number of dwellings, it's 120. It's small in relation to the remaining amount of development that we've granted permission for. That this development could be absorbed, the traffic from this development could be absorbed within the highway network without the relief road coming forward. That wouldn't be the same for the bigger sites, albeit that the Broad Oak site, there's a condition there that they can build around about 200 units, I think, before the Sturry Relief Road is built. But the logic when we dealt with when we took the local plan to examination, the logic there was we didn't want to hold back development, but we wanted to make that development pay, and that KCC was providing the road, so we had that certainty that when everything's in place, they will provide that road. It's not down to the developers. So I think in terms of restricting, we wouldn't want to do that for this site, and it would affect, obviously, the investment. Investors would have concerns if they, in terms of investing in the site at this stage, if they have that restriction in place. But I think the main point is that the transport assessment work shows that this site could be absorbed, and as you know, the National Planning Policy Framework test is that only if there's a severe impact from a development can you refuse it or consequently require conditions to overcome it or so on. So yeah, that would be my comments on that particular point. In terms of and I apologise for this, it's an omission in the report. The developer has in fact agreed to pay £37,000 contribution towards upgrading the public rights of way, and I think it's split. It's my notes. It's split 7,000 for CB 59, and 30,000 for CB 58. and any other improvements which would be footways within the highway, so along the front of the site, they would be dealt with through a highways agreement with Kent County Council. So they wouldn't need to pay money towards those, but they'd have to carry out the works at their expense through a Section 278 agreement under the Highways Act. So all of those pedestrian and cycle improvements, which are, as you say, crucial for this development in this location, they are going to be funded by the developer.
So just to come back on that, all of the footpath, whether it's within the site or not, will be improved. I'm talking particularly about CB59. So the bit where it meets Switchgate, going down to the through the Green Gap, that's right, all the way through to the top of Hillbrow Avenue. So it's just a
Yes.
it's just sort of like you know, an acknowledgement that will all be paid for one way or the other. The other thing is just a comment really that we have had commitments from developers before to pay for certain improvements that have never materialised or are very late in being materialising, and so I think that would just be my big concern, that some of these promises don't come to light and don't come to reality. And you know, we obviously have a job as councillors to hold them to account on that wherever we can. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we can put this in the minutes. I mean, it was an omission from the report, so we can put it in the minutes so it's recorded. And also, I think it's fair to say, because this is important when dwelling 1 is occupied, that access is in place so people can get to the shop, the bus stop, and so on. We can, if members required it, we could say that this money should be paid before occupation of Unit 1, for example, because it is, in effect, essential for every part of the development.
Person to speak is Dan Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair. A couple of things, really. I think I agree very much with Councillor Naomi Smith about the crossing. So I think that's right, that we need to make sure that it's safe for people to get into the main part of Sturry and down to the schools. For the footpaths, again, I agree with Councillor Prentice that needs to be firmed up. One thing I did notice on the highways that was very much missing was the development of the reservoir, because there's going to be a significant impact of heavy vehicles and quite a lot of work down in the bottom of the Cowcoll, which is just over the hill from this particular site, which may well cause some problems on the highways. So again, that's something that would lead to the Sturry Road works being finished in time for that, because I think that's quite some time in the future. So it's something that perhaps would be worth noting as a timeline restriction that you need in place for that. And also, I think one of the speakers mentioned about the width of Pope's Lane as it approaches the Herne Bay Road. It's not a particularly wide road. So I think that's something, again, that whilst not particularly an issue on this planning application, other than being noted as something that should be dealt with, I think it would be worth minuting or noting that that is something that it would be desirable to achieve in this particular development, to make it a better development, and also to improve the access to the Tesco's site, and which would be a direction that people will use. Thank you.
And Councillor Stockley. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As a young person, I lived in a block of flats that overlooked this particular piece of land. Thank you. Yeah, as a young person, I lived in a block of flats that overlooks this piece of land. I'm familiar with it. I'm banging on yet again about the sewage treatment works. You know, we're looking at 120 homes here, 30% of which are hopefully going to be available for our housing, people who require housing by the council. I am very concerned about the longevity of these treatment works, or indeed the costs of credits that may be coming forward in the future. If we have housing associations looking to purchase these properties, they're going to be very interested in how much their costs are going to be on this particular plant. You know, how long does it last? This is not necessarily a planning issue, but it's certainly something that concerns me greatly. And as has just been pointed out, we're expecting to have a reservoir built down the hill. We don't really want sewage leaking into it, etc. So I am very concerned about the fact that we're going to have a treatment works for a relatively small development. The other point I'd like to raise is the fact that Simon's point about the severity of the congestion. Obviously, the planning inspector felt that it would be severe. Otherwise, he would not have refused it or kicked out the appeal. Therefore, my point being that paying 2.6 million, correction, you said 2.8, this says 2.6. Okay, so if they're paying 2.6, all this amounts to really is a bribe to KCC as far as I can see, because nothing changes. The road's not built. Dane's point earlier that we are being pushed into approving these developments again to get the money to build the road. This has happened on at least 4 occasions that I know of, where if we refuse the planning permission, we won't get the road. And this keeps coming back. As Simon initially said, it was originally 3 developments that were going to provide the funding for this road. And now we're up to 5, and it carries on. You know, there's no stopping this. The road shows about as much sign of appearing as the next coming. So, you know, we really are just ploughing money into a road that KCC is committed to, but there again, the government's not even committed to KCC. What will happen in 2 years? Who knows? You know, we're building these properties. They're going to appear on the ground a lot quicker than this road is going to appear. We've got hundreds of new houses in this area with no road, and no sign of a road. I think that realistically, if we could rely on the government inspector's ruling that the impact would be severe, hence he threw it out, we could realistically expect the road to be built before this is built. It makes sense to me. Why continue compounding the problem? Thank you.
The evidence.
Is anybody else? I haven't got a note of anybody else. Yeah, Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to steal my thunder. I was going to say about the road, but anyway, no, certainly not. Yeah, basically, as we spoke earlier regarding it's refused before. It doesn't, according to the inspector, that the traffic flow from here is not absorbed by the natural flow of traffic. The question really was, I was a little bit confused, is for Popes Lane development, by giving the 2.6 million to fund, obviously towards the Story Road, has there been some detail or a report from KCC or traffic flow, how that actually does make a difference from Popes Lane by giving that money into that development? Bearing in mind that's further down the road. I mean, I can't see there's no road improvement as it stands, you know, coming out of the development from Popes Lane and then, going on to the main Canterbury Road and then either going left down the hill. But is there any work been done regarding the report that's the reason here that mitigates what the inspector was saying? Because that's the missing link for me here. All I can see is, as Councillor Stockett said, you know, the inspector who obviously looked at everything else for him or her, I don't know who the inspector was, on the site was fine. But does this, by paying this money, actually mitigate this problem? That's that. And the one other question I was going to say is, obviously, moving forward, if this application is approved, one thing I'd like to be taken into consideration, looking at the site plan you put up earlier, where you had an indicative development, and then we had the connecting footpaths all round, that from previous experience, that those footpaths are finished footpaths. They're not, even though they go outside the development and round for people to walk on and connect, that they're not just as a type 1 surface. We have this, as you know, in Herne Bay, where you can't even push a pushchair on it. You can't push a wheelchair on it. It was done under reserved and agreed matters, so it's done, but let's not let that happen again. Make sure that we have a bound gravel on top of basically a sub base. That's what's been left, and that's what the people have got to suffer, unfortunately, on that development, because it was agreed under reserve matters. Okay, thank you.
I was just wondering whether we've got two more people who now want to speak, but I think we ought to take each question as they come, so we will.
Yeah, I mean, just on the contributions, it's the inspector was looking at the cumulative effect of all the development, and it's sort of one of the imperfections of planning, isn't it? That you know, you could argue any development that adds to the problem is not acceptable, and therefore it shouldn't happen. But the only way you can move forward is if you accept that you'll let developments happen, but they'll all pay a proportionate contribution. And then together, you've got enough to fund a road, and that was the point here. And I don't know if you probably remember one of the first iterations of the current local plan, where we were looking at getting contributions from the Herne Bay sites towards the Story Relief Road, but that got so complicated, even though arguably, you know, they do contribute to the traffic. Logistically, trying to get contributions from everybody was pretty much impossible. This is difficult enough, but it's a question of them, people, you know, the developers paying a proportionate contribution, and us not stifling that development. I think is trying to get that right balance, and that's what I think we do have in this case. And the surface pass, I agree with you. If you're happy, Chair, we can add that to the minutes.
Yeah.
It's not.
It does say they're going to be improved, but not how. So we can add that detail. The next person is Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Coming back to the Story Relief Road, I suppose. When we, as a councillor at that time, I was on that committee, we was told then that if these were passed, that would pay for the Story Relief Road. Then we had the Hurston site come forward. Apparently, we need the money from some of that to pay for the Story Relief Road. Now we have this site coming forward, and it's apparently that's got to be paid for Story Relief Road. If we was told 6-7 years ago, when this got planning permission for the Story site, we may have questioned it, and actually it was nearly refused, if I remember rightly, and then it come back to committee and it was granted. But nobody at that point said we're not going to have enough money to finish Herne Relief Road, the Story Relief Road. And basically, when you talk about the golf course partly funded by, I think it's something like 3.6 million on the Herne Relief Road. So the developer can't pay for everything, and otherwise, this is what we do. I mean, we're basically building houses to pay for the infrastructure of all the roads. Build it and they will come, and the roads get used. So we're in a sort of catch-22, and I'm just wondering, when is this ever going to stop? You know, so if there's enough money, you know, we don't pay road fund tax, it goes somewhere else now. It used to pay for the roads, and maybe if we use some of that, we wouldn't have this scenario. But here we go again and again. Coming back to planning on this actual site, when it comes to supplying EV charging to all the vehicles, in the past, we've been told that there isn't enough power from the grid to actually supply power to the houses for EV charging. So the question is there enough capacity for us to have EV charging on all these properties? And if we're going to go to all the properties, I'm assuming there's going to be some terraced houses on these ones. How are they going to get to a charging point if they want to terrace out? We don't know again, I hate outline plan applications because we don't know what we're going to be getting. I'll say it every time, we're going to agree to it. We don't know what's coming, and we're agreeing to all this blindly. We're told it's going to work, and it's matters reserved. You know, we can put things forward, we can suggest things. So is there enough power to supply EV charging? And if you've got a terraced house, are you going to be able to charge your electric vehicle? Because that's what's coming forward. People are, going electric, 2030, 2035. We're all going to be either electric or hydrogen. Don't know, they're still in the peaking. So if you can't charge your car up, you're not going to get anywhere. Thank you.
And Councillor Naomi Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm still a bit confused about the 2.6 million and when the development will start and when the Storey Relief Road will start, because it appears to me that the Storey Relief Road is still not happened, and I believe it's going to start next year, but presumably this development will start next year, and we've already got the Broad Oak development. We've already got the problems in Storey with traffic. So I'm just a bit confused about how this works, because we do need a guarantee that they're actually going to get the Storey Relief Road, because it seems to me that we've been told this for the last 6-7 years. Then there's the parking bays on the site. To alleviate the parking on Pope's Lane, it's going to be very difficult. I'm not sure that I can see that there's a benefit, but you only need somebody to park them camper van there because it's free parking. Is there anything happening on the other side of the road to stop people parking outside the houses where they will want to park their cars? So you could end up with the parking bays full and people still parked on the road. So that was one of the other thing about it as well. Yep, that was my issues. Thank you.
I mean, the thing is, we can't control when people don't obey the signs and signals and all the rest of it, because we've got those problems everywhere, haven't we? People parking where they shouldn't be parking.
Asking if there's going to be any parking restrictions on Pope's Lane, so that people have to use the parking bays, but if they're not...
The point is there will be no parking along Pope's Lane, so...
But it doesn't tell me anywhere that that's the case. Where does it tell us that?
Apologies, I can't remember the paragraph, but I have read this a few times, so
Okay.
I need to check it.
It doesn't... That's the cycle one. Access arrangements.
Not being able to find it, but it does definitely say something about removing the parking on Pope's Lane. What Simon Thomas is pointing out is that because we don't know exactly where the access is going to be because it's all reserved matters at outline planning. So we don't know exactly what that will all look like. And obviously KCC Highways have got the responsibility for dealing with it. But I can't see why there would ever, you know, if you're going to remove the parking, you have to remove the permission to park as well. So for me, it's a conundrum that isn't, I don't think posing it as what will the signs be is, it's the other way around. It's like if they're going to remove the parking, there will be no signs saying you can park.
No, well, actually having parked, whilst, I mean, it's a narrow, nasty road, Pope's Lane. It has quite a lot of, you know, like as Councillor Mackenzie said, 540 vehicles within 2 hours or whatever it was on a January morning. But actually having the vehicles parked does slow traffic down, you know, which by creating the parking bays and no parking, you actually could be making the road faster and more dangerous. So it does need to be really well considered what does happen there. Yeah.
But I think the detail of it is reserved matters, isn't it? That's
With KCC or the Unitary Authority.
well, yes, that's true. So yes, I mean, I don't think we can. You know, I was only looking to see whether you wanted to add a condition, but I'm thinking about it as I'm looking for the paragraph. I can't think what that would be because we don't know so many other things. We can't specify. That's what I'm trying to explain. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you for allowing me to come back, Chair. I've not had an answer on the EV charging, but coming back to the widening of the road, could we not widen as a condition? I mean, if we don't, this is where we are. This is an outline application. Okay, I know this is quite drastic. You could lose some of the houses on the site and widen the road, so take the road further back. You can also put in speed restrictions. They've got it on the, I forget the name of the road, I use it all the time, up coming to the university. You've only got to put triangles in the road and you can't speed up that road as you come up from the back of the university. So the traffic calming can be put in there. You don't have to rely on someone's car to be crashed to actually not have it parked there. But it is a narrow road and it's going to get busier. So at the end of the day, can we not condition, as it is now, to actually have that road widened?
Just 1 second. Thank you. Just 1 second.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think the main point here really is that currently KCC and maybe in the future a unitary authority is responsible for designing the highway arrangements. It's not for us as a planning authority to design the highway improvements. KCC will look at it through their safety audits and all the processes that they go through. And effectively what they'll do is they'll design the road that accommodates this development safely. So it's not something that we would be concerned with at this stage. It would be something that they would pick up later on. And of course, at the moment, because it's an outline application, we don't even know where the access will be. We've got an indication, but we're not approving any access at all. Yeah, I mean, this is I don't know the answer to how much capacity there is, but this is quite a small development, and there is a requirement in the conditions that so prior to first occupation, electric vehicle charging points are provided for the individual houses and also communally as well, where if you've got if it's not possible to provide it for the individual house, but also through the building regulations, there's a requirement for EV charging. So, but yeah, there's this national question over overall capacity, but I think with a site this size, it's less of a question.
Councillor Dan Smith.
Sorry. Oh, hang on a sec. Sorry, Chair. I just thought I'd bring a blast from the past and refer to something that former Councillor Nick Eden-Green was used to refer to, which was on the point of electricity, is there something we can do about making sure all the houses are in a direction where solar panels can be easily put on their best position on the roofs and things, so that they have an potential element of energy generation in their own? Because I think that would be something. This particular housing estate is on a south-facing direction, so I think it should be quite easy to do that.
I mean, we only deal with controversial reserve matters here, or ones that get called in. So this would be something that, you know, if you or other people want to, you know, not happy with the reserve matters applications, the point I'm not sure about is they don't automatically come here. So I think that, you know, it's about keeping an eye on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see why, you know, I mean, you're vice chair, Dan, so I'm sure you could keep an eye on the application sites.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I think it would be worthwhile noting, because I think it's something that needs to be drawn to the attention of the developer as a potential advantage to their development to actually do that with very little cost to them.
I mean, I'm fairly confident that Harry and KG would be, you know, looking at this all the way through, and that so will residents. So, you know, personally, I think that we will, you know, we would know about what was happening. And obviously Corlin is the ward councillor. So in that sense, I mean, it's true of all these developments, isn't it? If we want to look at the reserve matters, we need to keep an eye on it and make sure we've got, you know, ears to the ground and we know when these things are coming in and what the resident, you know, what residents are saying about them at that stage. Councillor Stockley.
Very briefly, Chair. Could you remind me what our local plan says about solar and renewable energy on new houses? The forthcoming draft. Sorry.
So we're still operating under the 2017 plan, I think, as you know. You're saying, what does the new one say? Well, we've asked for, now, my memory, because you were on the working group as well. My memory is that the point was net zero homes, and we've you know, got a design guide to help produce that from you know, under our climate change cabinet member. I mean, we've seen it. It was produced, I think, after that working group finished, but it's gone out now for consultation. So that is there to advise developers how to get to net zero. And I would imagine that all those things, you know, if they've been assessed as the right way forward, will be in there. I mean, obviously, there's now other new initiatives coming through to talk about whether we should have solar panels on every house, etc., etc. But at the moment, I'm not sure whether they're mandated. But certainly, in our new local plan, the real important concept is the net zero homes.
Chair,
Yes, I mean, Simon's just pointing out as well, it's paragraph 27, where we're asking the developers at that point to provide a sustainability as a condition, so that strategy will have to be produced. And I think that it's all getting tighter anyway, you know, as I say, on a national basis, but certainly, you know, if we're now under the conditions for the new draft, we will be asking for higher standards. And I think that, you know, most developers are recognising that they're going to have to do that because they'll be competing with other people who will be building homes which will be more energy efficient. And, you know, what will people buy? Obviously, the ones that are cheaper to run. So, you know, I think, you know, that's certainly what's happened with South Canterbury. You know, in fact, I'd like to comment on a couple of things in relation to working on sites that are coming forward that we've already conditioned. I mean, obviously, Paul Prentice is also in Barton, so we both get updates. But for example, on the wastewater treatment plants, I mean, you will remember, because you were, probably you and David and I went through several iterations of the wastewater treatment systems there. And of course, in those 2 or 3 years, they've massively improved. the quality, of the water that will come out of them. This has got a small polishing pond, as it were, but that's got reed beds, the other one. But each time we get a new iteration, the actual work that's been done, because this is a national problem. I mean, I know we've got Stodmarsh, but, Hampshire had a complete stop on building for the same reason, because of their water, surface water and sewage water contamination. They had no building going on at all for a while. And again, so the companies have, been striving to get these in. And while it's not, absolutely relevant, but, that I did see some quite good reports when people visited the one that's on the Broadoak site in terms of lack of odour, and that came from, directly into me, because I'm chair of planning. So people wrote to me about that visit. They are improving massively all the time. Not that I'm saying they need to, because the one on Broadoak people seem quite happy with. I was worried about it, I have to be honest with you, because it's very close to the houses. But I mean, we're just in the process, obviously, aren't we, of getting all this technology far better. And perfect doesn't happen, but hopefully no developer will be going backwards in terms of the type of plant they're putting on a site. I don't know whether it's worth trying to do a summing up here. This will be the last contribution. Councillor Thomas.
You'll be happy it's not actually a contribution, it's a comment more than anything. I have noticed driving around all the sites that I have successfully or unsuccessfully passed through the committees and in my 10-year tender. Basically, I have noticed a lot of the developers, especially the one on the Whitstable site, are putting in solar panels and the public want them. So I think it's going to be something that starts naturally. And now, because we're in 2025, everyone's got to have a heat source pump. So that runs off electricity. So it eventually the infrastructure, I think, will start coming naturally and people will kind of demand it. And they go, well, if it hasn't got solar panels, I'm not going to buy it. So I think the generations coming through are expecting that. I'm not wording that very well, but fingers crossed it starts moving forward and better. Thank you.
I think that's right. And I mean, the other thing I was going to comment on is the experience of South Canterbury, again, because it's such a huge site. I mean, clearly what's had to happen and what is happening and why it's taking so long to even build a house is because of the infrastructure that has to be put in to start with. And part of that is definitely the electric substations and the size of them and the importance of them. And we're going to be talking solar panels on, there's loads of sites coming forward for the solar panels, and that's going to be a big discussion that we need a briefing on, and we need to, get more of a grip on, because obviously there's the battery storage and everything else coming through. And I had a couple of meetings with residents from different parts of not my area, different parts of the district, asking me to basically talk to Simon about all of this. So I think we do, we need to catch up on a lot of these things. And some of that will have to be background. But yes, I think the electricity capability is always something that has to be assessed before any building can happen, and will have to be on this site as well. Okay, I'm not sure that we do need a summing up, because I think we've comprehensively discussed everything in this. Obviously, we need to remember the recommendation is based on the fact that, we are in presumption. We've also got, obviously, a discussion about the road, the fact that the inspector said it was the cumulative effect that was the problem. The contribution is a KCC matter, and that's what they've asked for. So I don't think that will change. I share, I understand people's feelings about one contribution after another towards that road. But we all know that building costs have gone up, materials have gone up, and that's actually happening everywhere and causing viability issues and problems for developers everywhere. So that explains, I think, what's happening with that road, the same as very many others. So I'd like to move to a vote and remind you that wait a minute, I'd like to just check some of the additional conditions before I put the recommendation again. So hopefully, Simon, Yeah, can just read his notes on those. So we just check off those points and just make sure if you want to add any others that you can do.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it was to add one condition, which was to require the crossing at Hillbrow Avenue to be provided before first occupation. So to make a condition that that happens. And then there was another note for the minutes, which was around the omission from the report, which is the contributions towards footpath improvements, and that they should be improved to the extent that they're usable in all conditions and they're not left with a type 1 surface.
On conditions, Naomi, yeah? Yeah. Ms Smith, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The condition on the crossing is, will it be, I don't know whether it needs to be a pelican or a toucan, but it needs to or a zebra. You know, it's an animal. Yeah, I think, because if it's just going to be indicated by, you know, paving, it's not enough. So it's the crossing's substantial.
Informal crossing as opposed to a formal crossing.
Yes, it needs to be a formal. Is it going to be a formal crossing? That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, again, because it's the highway, and we're not the Highways Authority, it will be down to KCC to decide what crossing. But I think if we put the condition on saying a crossing needs to be provided, then obviously that then sets that requirement, which KCC will, you know, design in detail. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Councillor Prentice.
Just wanted to check that the 103,000 developer contribution for healthcare requested by the NHS is something that is part of the deal here. Yeah.
We'll add it to the minutes because although it was in the request,
It is
it
yes.
wasn't repeated in the report, and we do say section 106 according to the report. So we'll put these omissions. They should have been in.
Thank you.
Okay. So if we're happy, those are the conditions. Go back to proposing that we vote on the recommendation. The recommendation is authorisation be given to the Head of Planning and Health to grant planning permission subject to a section 106 legal agreement to secure the obligations set out in the report and the imposition of safeguarding conditions as recommended in the report. I had a second on Councillor Prentice. And could we move to the vote, Andrea? Thank you very much.
So that is carried with 10 in favour, 1 against and no abstentions.
Thank you very much, everybody. There is no urgent business advised to me to be dealt with in public, and we don't have any other business which falls under exempt provisions. And the date of the next meeting is Tuesday, 24th of June at 7 o'clock. So thank you very much, everybody.